your packet that was put in front of your seat there, you have the 2026 draft master budget with a 2025 revised budget and the projection for comparison. You also have a copy of the 5-year capital plan. Those items were also in the packet that are on the website, but I also printed out a copy of what I'm going to be presenting up here for the graphs, just in case you wanted to take notes or write down questions or whatnot, so that you have that. Basically, as I did last year, I'm going to be presenting the budget in 3 different fund groups. I'm going to group them with the general operating funds, the sewer funds, and the capital funds. So the general operating funds are the funds that collect all of the monies that come into the township, the tax monies, and that pays for the personnel to run, protect, and maintain the township. Then we have the sewer funds. The sewer funds are the sewer operating fund and the capital. The sewer operating fund handles the treatment of township sewage by Ambler, repairs and maintenance of township, and also of township sewer system, which carries the sewage to the treatment plant and it bills the customers. It's a business-like activity. And we also have a sewer capital fund that repairs, maintains, builds new infrastructure for the sewer lines, the pump stations, et cetera, owned by the township. And then the third group are the capital funds. And the capital funds receive interest on reserves, grants, and surplus from the operating funds, and it handles all of the projects, road paving, vehicle and equipment purchases, et cetera. So the first graph there that we have, this is the general fund operating revenues. As you can see, the largest part there in green, that piece of the pie, is the earned income tax. And that makes up 50% of all of the revenues that come into the township are from earned income tax. We also have the blue portion there, which is related, is the mercantile, the local services tax, and the business privilege tax. That makes up 11%. Real estate taxes there at the bottom in the purple, that's 14% of the total revenue comes from real estate taxes. We also have transfer tax, which is 5%. State aid that comes in for the fire and for the pension is 5%. Our permits and licenses are approximately 4%. We also have interest that's on our reserves that makes up 3% of our total revenues. The rental income that I have listed there, that's the Wells Fargo lease, and that's some of the allocation of expenses that the sewer fund pays the general fund for handling the things that we need to do for the sewer. And let's see, what else did I not go? Oh, and then we have subdivision, zoning, and conditional use fees, which are 2%. That gives us total budgeted revenues for 2026 in the general fund operating of $11,932,635. Now, I'm going to go into the explanation of the revenue types. I didn't do that last year, but I kind of just wanted to go over some of them with you. So if we go to the next slide. This is a running total of the earned income tax. This shows the years from 2022 through 2025. 2025 is the orange line that only goes through September because that's all I had when I printed off the graphs. But you can see that it's very consistent. Unless you have a K-1 from a partnership or an S-Corp or you're a C-Corp, earned income tax is withheld by the employer, and that's why it's so consistent and it comes in consistently. And basically, it's 1% on the earnings levied on individuals who live in the municipality. That's shared 50-50 with the school district, or non-residents who work in the township who don't have an earned income tax where they live. That's not shared with the school district, and those are the monies that come in. For the 2026 budget, we are using $6 million, and the 2025 projection is $5.8 million. We pay commissions to Berkheimer for collecting this tax. Berkheimer collects this. We consider it an Act 511 tax. We pay them currently 1.1%, but that's going to be lowered to 0.93% in February. We just got an email on that. So that commission will be lowered.
Why is that? Why are they lowering it?
They came up with a new agreement when their contract runs up.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, I know.
Those things never go down.
Unexpected, yes. You will notice that 2022 is a little higher. You can see where most of the graphs, it's increasing a little bit for each year, but 2022 is much higher. That's because we were coming off of the post-pandemic return and everybody was going back to in-person operations. And that's what that makes it. But 2025 is running slightly higher than 23 and 24. Go to the next slide. This is the business privilege tax. So business privilege tax is a gross receipts tax on services and professions. It's 1.5 mils. So if your gross receipts are $10,000, you're going to pay $15 in gross receipts tax. We pay Berkheimer commissions on this tax of 2.25%. And if you notice, the orange line for 2025 is much higher than the other lines. If you remember a couple of months ago, I told you we had collected 234,000 of prior year delinquent taxes. We don't expect that to happen again. I know they did send out letters for that and they were thinking that might have been it. It could have also been that now that people are out of the pandemic, it took them a little bit to catch up and they're paying past taxes on that. The budget that we have for 2026 is 650,000 and the projection for 25 is 750,000. The projection is higher because we collected those prior taxes. If we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about the mercantile tax. So the mercantile tax is also a gross receipts tax, but this is on wholesale and retail goods. The retail goods are taxed the same as the business privilege at 1.5 mils, but the wholesale goods are taxed at 0.2 mils. So basically, again, on $10,000, you're looking at $15 on retail or $2 for wholesale. We pay Berkheimer a commission of 2.25% on this also. You will notice that 2022, the pink line skyrocketed real high. The majority of that was due to an electrical contractor. They paid their 2019, 20, 21, and 22 taxes in 22. That totaled over 122,000. And then there was an additional 10 accounts that paid back taxes totaling 61,000 for an increase of about 183K. So that was kind of an anomaly and we don't plan on that happening.
That electrical contractor still here?
No, they went out of business. So that's why they ended up paying all the back taxes.
I see.
Yeah, probably from COVID.
Who do we get this mercantile tax from?
Berkheimer collects all of the taxes I just went through. And it's on gross receipts on wholesale and retail goods.
So like at a grocery store or?
And for business privilege on the gross receipts.
Okay.
We're only budgeting $240,000 for 2026 and the 2025 projection was 248. So it is increasing because you have to take out what was in there, but it's just small.
Well, and does Berkheimer's rate remaining the same for the mercantile tax and the business privilege tax? It's only the earned income tax?
It's only the earned income tax that's going down, yes.
And we don't negotiate that, as the county negotiates that?
I think the county negotiates, no?
The state law requires there to be county-wide collection of their earned income tax. So there is a committee that we are a part of, the Montgomery County Tax Collection Committee, which is all the municipalities and all the school districts in Montgomery County that have an earned income tax. And all the members vote for a board who does most of the work. And they are the ones who have the management committee just went out and reviewed, Berkheimer versus some of its Keystone is really the main competition. And then decided to renew their contract for an 8-year contract. They've been doing 5-year renewals. I think that's
Wow.
partly why they were able to negotiate that smaller percentage. Not a whole lot of municipalities have the business privilege and the mercantile tax. In the 1980s, the legislature stopped allowing municipalities to impose the gross receipts tax. So if you did not have one as of, I think it's 86, you could not impose that tax, and anyone who did have it could not raise the rates. So you're capped where it is. Because of that, not a whole lot of municipalities have that. Most municipalities have the local services tax, but that's a much smaller tax than the local services tax. for convenience for the businesses, I think most of the municipalities in Montgomery County that have those business taxes use Berkheimer so that the businesses only they have to submit to Berkheimer for their earned income tax withholdings. And that way they're using the same company for the business tax withholdings, but that's a much smaller percentage of what they're collecting. So the percentage is higher.
And
The
is that,
administrative percentage is higher. So the township has the option to go to somebody else for the local services tax and the gross receipts tax collection.
oh, we do.
If you wanted to, you have to use the Berkheimer, the county-wide selected tax collector for the earned income tax. It's not county government, but our group of municipalities and school districts. You don't have to for the others, but it does make sense,
It would make for
administratively,
one
just to
person, yeah.
not add confusion to the businesses in Lower Gwinnett.
Okay.
If we go to the next slide, the local services tax. The local services tax is the $52 a year that you pay. And it's paid by anyone who works in the township. If you make less than $12,000, you're exempt from the tax, but employers are required to withhold it. It's used to fund, it's not actually a per capita tax. A lot of people did. I looked this up. It's used to fund essential community services at the municipal levels, which would be the police, fire protection, and the road maintenance. It's very consistent, as you can see, the way we collect it. We budgeted for 2026, 425,000, and the 2025 projection is 444. We pay commissions to Berkheimer of 1.75% on the local services tax. So if you go to the next slide. So I asked, well, Mimi actually got me this chart from Montgomery County that lists out in all of Montgomery County, the municipalities and the millage rates that they charge for real estate taxes. I've sorted this by the township borough millage. You can see that's in the light blue. And if you turn to the next page, you'll see that we are fifth from the bottom. We are the fifth lowest millage for municipal township tax rate. Let me see what else. Oh, just the last time we increased the tax increase with real estate was 2011. It went up from 1.117 mils to 1.223 mils. That's a 0.106 mils or 9.5% increase. I find real estate taxes, when I went to do this, a little convoluted. So the next slide kind of breaks it down a little bit, just because they use assessment instead of market value. They use millage instead of a percent, just to kind of confuse everyone. So on this page, the top chart there in the left-hand corner, I requested from Montgomery County a total assessed value by class in our township. So what they did is they broke down the classes between commercial, industrial, residential, farmland, and exempt. And you can see the assessment values that they have there and the unit count of each. Basically, Lower Gwinnett has 1.5 billion, a little over 1.5 billion in assessed values in properties. Okay, and there's the unit count. If you look at the residential, there's 3,978 residential homes with an average assessed value of $289,147. So Montgomery County last did an assessment in 1996. So in 1996, your assessed value was supposed to equate to what the market value of your home was. But every year, everything changes or whatnot and goes through. So the state has something that they call a common level ratio. And they use a whole bunch of different statistics to come up with this, but every year they come up with it. And they're on a fiscal year, so it covers from July 2025 through June 30th, 2026. And that period, the CLR factor is 3.25. So that equates to, and the CLR of 1 divided by 3.25, or 31% of your market value is your assessed value. If you take the average residential residence at 289,000 and you multiply it by the CLR, the market value of that property is $939,727. So basically the average value of a residential home in Lower Gwinnett Township is the $939,000. So if we go to the next page, I wanted to kind of equate this to where we are with regards to the real estate taxes. So we took exactly what I just showed you and I add the little block up to the left. So the total real estate tax millage, if you live in Lower Gwinnett Township, is 32.519 mils. And we break that out between the school district, which also includes the library, of 25.654. Montgomery County plus the community college is 5.642, and Lower Gwinnett Township is at the 1.223. If you take that average residential assessment of the 289 and times it
Lord.
by the millage, you'll see in total, it's $9,400. And of that, you can see 7,400 is the school, 1,600 is the county, and Lower Gwinnett gets $354 or 4% of the real estate tax. Okay, so that you know what that is. We have budgeted 1.7 million in 2026 for real estate tax collection this year.
I just want to thank you for pulling that out and presenting it to us. While I did know that, I think for the average citizen, breaking it, like even though you see your receipt and you see where your taxes are going, understanding like how low our millage is and how little of the money is actually going to the township, and then how much is going to the county and how much is going to the school district. I think people have a generalized idea, but I think to see it like that very clearly and very distinctly is helpful. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it helped me too. I wanted to kind of fully understand it if I was going to sit here and take questions on it. So,
And
so that you
Melinda,
know.
just to clarify, when we went through all these different types of taxes, the real estate, Lower Gwinnett Township real estate millage rate is the only tax
We have
we
control
can
over.
control.
That
Yes,
we can
all the others, I consider all the other taxes we control sort of indirectly because we take care of the township and we maintain it and we do things with the parks and the rec and whatnot. People want to live here and that's how, you know, why the population is why we get the other taxes. But the real estate tax is the only tax that we can actually control.
We can change the number.
We could change, yes.
And the last time that it was updated was 2011,
Yes,
which is 14 years ago.
yes.
Now, to some degree, I know that when I first came to the board, there was conversation around the bond rating, the AAA and the Moody and how Moody's categorizes you. And I think there was at one point an auditor who kind of said not raising the taxes also can be a hindrance to
Yes,
some degree.
it lowers, Moody's likes to see small tax increases as opposed to one large one later on, just because they know that everything goes up, you know, and you want to make sure that you have reserves and things like that. So they do like to see more steady tax increases that are smaller. And in perspective, so in 2011, we raised it 9.5%, but the increase in dollars, I think, is $32 more that we're getting on that residential residence of the 289, just to kind of get that in your mind. Because I kind of went through those calculations and took out my own tax bill and tried to figure
Mhm.
everything out. Because I never broke it down like this and it was
Mhm.
always confusing to me with assessment and millage or whatnot, so.
That's helpful, Melinda. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Then if we go to the next slide, so we're going to be bringing this to the board. I have collapsed the rec fund into the general fund. Last year, we moved most of parks out of the rec fund. So the rec fund was really left with only 5 or 6 accounts. And it really shouldn't be a standalone fund because we're got to transfer money in there anyway. So we collapsed that into the general fund in the budget. You'll see that for the expenses, it's in Department 451, okay, for the expenses. So what we have to do is there's millage that's assigned to the recreation. So we've got to pull that up and increase it in the general fund. So all we're doing is collapsing the millage from the rec into the general fund, making it go from 0.877 to 1.047. There's no increase in the tax rate. It's just the component of it we're moving up. And I'm going to present this resolution so that you guys can pass that just so you know. Okay, for next
And
year.
we're still able, even though it's collapsed into the general fund, we can still track what we're spending on recreation expenses and any revenue we're generating from
Yes.
recreation. We can still keep track of that. There's just not a separate millage.
It's just, yeah, yes, and it's not a separate fund, but yes, we can, yes. The way I put the expense accounts in 451 and the revenue accounts are very explicit as to what they are in the rec.
Thank you.
The next graph, this is the general operating fund expenses. So as I did last year for the expenses, what I did was I broke them out into the different departments that we have. And if you look on the master budget that's attached, that first column on the left-hand side, I've kind of grouped them because they're sort of in order to tell you which individual accounts are part of admin or finance or the police so that you can see it. They're also separated out by department on the expenses. So I know like police are 410, public works is 430, and you'll denote that when you see the master budget, you can correlate them across. Basically, each department that we have in here, except for the fire and ambulance and the debt, each department contains wages, payroll taxes, benefits, and department-specific technology, supplies, dues, communications, and professional services. So each department have those components. The police, which is the big orange part of the pie there, is 48% of our total expenses for the budget. But that department also includes the repairs and maintenance for the vehicles and also the fuel. And also they're manned 24/7, 365 days a year. So just to bring that. And then if we look at the public works, slice of pie there, it's blue, it's 15%, but the public works also includes repairs and maintenance for their vehicles, equipment, tools, fuel, the park maintenance, and the snow removal and the snow supplies are also in that department. If we look at admin, so admin is like the you guys, the township manager, all of that. That also includes the expenses for the township solicitor, staff engagement, the newsletter, website. It also includes all of the computer hardware and company-wide software, laptops, printers, and like the Microsoft software that everybody uses. It's all in one bucket. And it also includes 75% of the workers' comp insurance and 92% of the property liability insurance is part of that admin slice of pie at 12%. Then we have planning and zoning. Planning and zoning is the brown slice of pie up there. It's 7%. And that department also includes the professional services for inspection, engineering, traffic engineering, and legal expense. Then we go up to, I have building, which is 3%. So the building includes all of the landlines and all of the building supplies, paper towels, toilet paper, things like that, including the park buildings.
Okay.
So that component includes all of that. Finance is 5%. It's that dark green wedge. So finance includes everything that I had said before, but it also includes the tax collector and the Berkheimer commissions. Okay, you see that. And then recreation. So recreation is the small sliver of green up there. That is 2%. And that includes Fall Fest, the concerts, the events, things like that, along with what I had mentioned above. And then we have debt service, which is 3%, and fire and ambulance. So the fire and ambulance includes it includes the relief and the relief payment on that, but the contributions to the fire and to the ambulance. Our total budgeted expenses for the operating funds are $11,246,000 and $7. Are there any questions on that? So if we go to this to me is one of the most important slides that you're going to look at, because what this is doing is I'm taking the different types of revenues that I just explained and the department expenses that are in the 2026 budget, and I'm kind of laying them out here so you can see the surplus or the deficit and what it includes. So if we're looking at the revenues.
I just have one question. I'm sorry to make you go back.
No.
Just tell me what piece of the pie, like funding for EAC, thinking of our tree giveaway or cleanup.
Okay, so those are different funds. These are the operating funds.
Okay. So it's
Okay.
not in rec. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a part of the rec.
No.
Okay.
So if we look at the,
One clarification. So like we do have in admin, there's an account that has money for
That's what I
just
thought.
general boards and commissions. That's in there.
That's in
Same
there.
as, yes.
So it's in the admin.
that part's in the admin. The tree giveaway is in the stormwater.
I was just
fund,
using
and
tree giveaway as an example, but like all
Oh,
of the
right.
stuff for the boards and commissions is in admin.
I
Yes.
thought that's what you meant.
Oh,
You were
okay, I
answering
was
the tree
thinking-
giveaway
I was
question.
thinking tree.
Yeah, just forget
Okay.
it. I just was using an example. Okay, so it's in the admin.
You picked the
Yeah.
one, right? The one I
Your
heard
example was a
anyway,
bad
not it.
example.
Okay, it's in admin. Thank
Okay.
you.
So if we look here at the revenues, so the real estate taxes, they're remaining stable. Transfer taxes, we are budgeting a little higher in the transfer taxes. That really depends on the sales of property and economic conditions, but we're assuming interest rates have gone down. They're probably going to go down a couple more times, which would make mortgage rates more reasonable and people might be purchasing more homes and selling homes. The earned income tax and right below it, the mercantile and the business privilege. So I reached out to Berkheimer. There's a gentleman there that I deal with, James, who's wonderful, and said, hey, can you give me estimates on what you think the projections are going to be for 2025 and for 2026? He sent them over. Mimi and I sat down and went through them. And because it's revenue, we were conservative and picked the lower end of his grouping to put in there. It looks like we're doing less for the business privilege tax and mercantile, but we're not, because remember, we're not budgeting for the prior taxes that we got. So it is actually a slight increase. Permits and licenses, that's an estimate that can vary a lot. But we basically look at what has happened over the past years and kind of come up with an amount that we think works in there. Interest. So interest, we're budgeting about $24,000 more. And I want to say that I know interest rates are coming down, but we did an RFP because you guys had asked for us to do an RFP for banks. And we switched from one bank to Citadel. And the differential on the interest that we're earning on those three accounts is ridiculous. So we're doing much better with that. It was a very good thing to do. And so that's why it's kind of up a little bit on the operating funds that we have going on there.
I mean, I like when you call money that we're gaining ridiculous. I mean, that sounds positive.
It was a really good thing to do the RFP and to check out different banks and to go with a credit union and what they offered. We didn't have any fees like on our payroll account. We moved both a general and a sewer account over there. And we are making a lot more on interest. So it was a really good move. It was a very good move. Our state aid, we get letters from the state for,
Got to do a little bit of singing the praises of the finance director. So because I have seen a lot of this information. So as of, was it 3 years ago, we were collecting about 300,000 in interest, and now we're collecting $1.3 million in interest. So, and some
Here we
of
go.
that is switching banks, which was done at the behest of the board. Some of that is also because Melinda's been taking a lot of time to really pay attention and take a lot of care with this. So she has moved money even in Pliget, a different bank that where the bank that institution has remained the same, but may just be more careful to move money into accounts that are interest bearing, minimizing the amount that can't. So some of that is also because of Melinda's good.
I mean, you should get a standing ovation. It is
Yeah,
really
that's
late at
great.
night, but thank you so much.
That's like free money. I mean, that's
yeah,
great.
I have written down here on one of my last slides to present to you. In 2022 it was 326,000.
Mhm.
In 2023 is $1 million, and in 2024 is $1,337,000.
That is incredible.
2025, we're doing $1,328,000, but we did do a bond issuance, and that bond money is sitting in an account because it's not subject to arbitrage and it's earning. But we took 3.3 million out of the open space reserve and spent that. So we only added like $1 million, but we're doing really well now. And I'm just trying to keep all the money sort of out of the checking accounts and into the money market accounts so that it works better. And that, I think that's helping us overall.
Absolutely.
I think you're helping every resident of Lower Gwinnett. We thank you tremendously.
Thank you.
So our state aid is our fire state aid, and we get pension monies in the general operating funds, and we get letters from the state, and that small increases from the two of those. I've already received the letters, and I put in what our estimate would be. Our subdivision zoning and conditional use fees. So we have a large increase on that. But spoke with Jamie, and we do have some building projects that we think are going to be incurring in 2026. So we sort of estimated those in those calculations, and that's why that is higher. The bank lease and the sewer allocation, that 3,500 is the Wells Fargo lease is March to April, and there's a small increase, and that is the increase that occurred. The cable, the violations, recycling and miscellaneous. So we have that going down. We're getting a lower recycling grant. They're basing it now on pounds and not population. But also the cable monies that we would get, people are dropping cable and they're paying for streaming, and we don't get that on streaming services. So that's why that is lower. And then on the transfers, so that transfer that we're looking at is from the sewer, and it comes into the operating funds to pay for a portion of the defined contribution plan for retirement. Now, it didn't increase 20,000. What occurred was in the defined contribution plan, when someone comes in and you start to put the amount of money, whether it's 4% or 6% in there, and they leave before they're fully vested, that unvested portion sits in there and it's in a forfeiture account. So I used that instead of taking monies out of the general fund against it, and that's why it's lower. So it's not that it increased that much, it's because I used forfeiture money, and the forfeiture money didn't come back in here for us to put it in as a revenue. So it was just sitting at actually Mission Square, who was holding it. And I saw that and just started to use that instead of taking more money out. So overall, we're projecting an increase of 267,000, which is 2.2% overall increase from the projection for 25 to 26. But that sort of makes sense with the economy, and we didn't increase real estate taxes or anything like that. So it's sort of, just maintaining. When we look at the expenses for the funds, before going through the line items, if you look at the bottom, so we're looking at the 2026 expenses are going to be 11,246,000, and the projected for 2025 is 10,507,000. That's a $738,000 increase. That's 7% of an increase. So before I go through each individual thing, I want to tell you what the major components of that are. So our health insurance, which is in every department except for debt and the fire, okay? And the workers' comp and the property and liability increased 6.4%. All right. So our health insurance is a major component in the operating funds because of personnel. So that really drove a lot of the 7%. Then I want to explain that last year in the fall, we created a new account, Mamie created a new account, technology. Okay. Before, some of technology was, it might have been in contracted services or subscriptions, but most of it wasn't in the operating funds. It was sitting in the capital funds because we had this thing in the basement called the server room. And we had servers down there, and we had uninterruptible power supplies, and we had to maintain the cooling so everything was cool and everything would keep working. And the expenses on that are very sporadic. So every couple of years you might have something that was large. So it was in the capital account. Now that we have technology and we've finally had the conversion all to the cloud, and I know Michelle's very happy about that. We finally made it. But when you go to the cloud, we don't have any more servers. We don't need to maintain that. Now, basically what you're doing is you're paying for your technology annually, because the software that you have, you're paying for their cloud storage, for their security, they're holding the backups and all of your data up there. So you're paying an annual fee or a monthly fee for that. That's very consistent. It is operating. So we've kind of moved some of the technology that was based in the capital accounts up into the operating. So, and each one of our departments has that also, except for debt and fire. And that's kind of where I think the 7% overall increase is coming from, between the insurances, the 6.4%, and then switching some of those sporadic costs of our capital up to more of an annual type expense. That's where you're seeing most of that. If we do go through, when we look at the admin and we see, the 103,000, remember that they pay for all the company-wide software and all the laptops and things like that. And Michelle is working on a worksheet where she lists out all of our laptops, our iPads, things like that. And she's doing a replacement schedule. I think it's for 10 years. So each year now we'll be able to budget based on how old the computers are. Finance, that also increased again from the things that I spoke of. And, now we pay Munis, which is Tyler Tech, a large chunk that we never had to before because everything is up in the cloud, including all of our backups, our upgrades and things like that.
Melinda, do you guys anticipate that we would ever change health insurance carriers for the township? That's something we review every few years.
It is something to look at every few years. It is really difficult to beat the rates that that the Delaware Valley Health Trust gets
Okay,
from Aetna. That's so much like I was talking about with that countywide tax collection committee. Divot is a cooperative basically of municipalities and school districts, some municipal authorities, local governments that comes together and kind of as a pool. They pool the buying power of all of these entities and pitch that together. And they look back and forth, I think, every so many years. They've stayed with Aetna for years and years. They just have a good deal with them. So I have looked over the years. I'll tell you, I've been burned from experience a couple times, shopped around. Blue Cross will give you a great deal and like lock it in for 2 years. And then the third year, whatever the next year is, you get so much higher. And then it's harder. It's just hard on everybody switching insurance again. I agree with you. It is worth looking around. But I do know just it's very difficult to beat the cost that Divot's going to get. And part of it is also too, they've worked this out with Aetna to have a great deal of flexibility in the plans. So we have a health insurance plan that's required in the collective bargaining agreement we have with the police union. So if we were shopping around, what Blue Cross, because that's the only other game in town, is going to want you to do is, if you want to save money, then you've got to make all of these changes, just like, in the private sector that companies have done. And we couldn't for half of our staff. That's locked in by contract. So we'd only be shopping around. The only time to shop around, in other words, is when you're looking at a new contract for the police. Because otherwise we are small if we're only Lower Gwinnett Township, and we'd be really small if it's only the non-uniform staff that we're shopping around.
okay.
Yeah, and Divot's like a captive for an insurance company because of who they service. So you do get like the rate stabilization funds and we get dividends and stuff from them, which is usually very hard to beat.
Good.
Okay, so I did want to point out, looks like there's a large increase in the public works, but we shifted the snow supplies for salt that used to be paid out of the capital fund for liquid fuels up into public works because we're saving the money that we received and using some of the reserves for our paving projects. So that's why that increased. And our debt service and some of the recreation costs, it looks like it went down. That's because we shifted some up to public works because it made more sense to be up there, like some of their utilities and things like that for the buildings since we collapsed it into the general fund. So again, the overall expenses are 7% higher. But I also want to point out, and I think this is really good. So if you look at the surplus, before we make transfers to the capital funds, we have a surplus. We have 1.1 in the projection and we have 720 in the budget. That is after we pay the debt service of the 5 million that we took out in 2024. So I just think that that's a really good thing. Interest is helping with that, obviously, if you look at that. And then even if you look, so we have budgeted for 25 and for 26, a transfer to the capital funds of $500,000. But as you can see, 2025 is looking like it's still going to have a surplus after that. So as we get closer, Mimi and I sit down and we discuss what we're looking at for a surplus. And if we find that it is higher and it is like that, we'll increase the transfer through a board resolution so we can get that into the capital funds. Because right now we are carrying a good reserve in the general operating funds, and we can put it there for projects.
Okay. That's awesome. That's really good news.
Yeah, good news, right? Okay. The next draft is the sewer funds, which includes the sewer operating fund, which is a business-like fund. It's one of our few business-like funds, and it also includes the sewer capital fund. So, the sewer revenues that come in, those are all from the treatment of sewage that we bill out, and the major expense is the sewer treatment. I do want to point out that the operating fund handles the Ambler capital projects, okay, because we don't own those, and that's part of operating. In 2024, their capital projects were 750,000. They're only 150,000 for 25 and for the budget for 26, what they've told us. So sometimes that can vary greatly, and that doesn't go through our capital fund. The only thing that goes through our capital fund are what we own, okay? So we are looking at total revenues of 3,166,000 and the total expenses of 2.9 million. If the capital projects or something shifts, sometimes we'll do a transfer from the operating if there's a surplus into the capital. But if the sewer operating doesn't have a surplus because of something like the Ambler capital projects, we'll transfer from the capital into the sewer operating. We do have reserves in there, and the interest is very helpful. You can see the interest on the sewer funds is 334,000, which is really helping keep the operating afloat, and those reserves are allowing us to be able to keep those self-funding between the two funds. The last time I think that we did a rate increase on the sewer was 2017, just so you know. Okay, for what we charge for that. Are there any questions on the sewer funds?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what you said about if Ambler decides to have a big expense, that doesn't affect how much we're committed to pay to them.
So if the operating is pretty flat, once they give us a budget for that, we're pretty much set for the year. The capital, hopefully what they give us for the budget, we'll know for sure. But even sometimes through the year, that can fluctuate. But if we're actually, Fred and I I'm going to Ambler tomorrow, and there's a meeting about the sewer system and presumably about the budget. If they came back with updated numbers and the capital was much larger than what we have in the budget right now, we would then do a transfer from our separate sewer capital fund into the sewer operating fund to cover it. So there wouldn't be a
see.
deficit in the sewer operating
I see.
fund, but we like to have both of the Ambler treatment accounts, their operating and the capital, all in the operating fund. One, so you see the whole cost, and two, because those are operating costs. Those aren't our facilities. It's not our plant.
Yeah. And do we, I guess you'll know after tomorrow, foresee that Ambler's going to make any improvements, expensive improvements in the next few years?
They've been saying for a few years that in the next few years, there's going to be some expensive. So some of that just takes time. We see that here too. It can take a while to do the planning for it, figure out the design, maybe figure out how to pay for it on their end as well. So I guess we'll know more tomorrow of how soon that may be coming.
Okay, thanks.
The sewer capital fund is purchasing, so some of our vehicles and equipment, we split, say, between public works and sewer. Sometimes the truck is just for sewer. So we are purchasing 118,000 of vehicles, equipment, and televising to check for needed repairs in the pipes. Plus, there's a small portion of the LGT building, and that is going to the sewer capital, and the lifting of manholes when we do paving, that goes to the sewer capital fund. Okay, the next one is our capital funds revenue. So our capital funds are the capital fund and the open space fund I've combined, okay? And they handle the infrastructure rebuilding, the large maintenance projects, park upgrades and improvements, the land purchase, and it's going to handle our public works building. Traffic impact. The Traffic Impact Fund, it gets the impact fees from new development, and impact fees are considered Act 209. And Act 209 is restricted for projects in the approved Act 209 Capital Improvement Plan. Some years we receive grants, and those grants are not restricted to Act 209, but they're restricted for the project we received the grant for. I will say that last year we used up all of the Act 209 reserves we had to finish the intersection, the multimodal intersection over here. We also have the Highway Aid Fund, which I call liquid fuels. We receive from the state, from the gas tax, a certain amount of money. That is restricted, and they audit that almost every year. That's just for paving projects that has to go through the approval process. That fund actually uses its own checks from the checking account, so we're not mixing funds in it. It does have some reserve in it, and I do know that this year we're going to be using some of that reserve because our paving project is a little more than we're receiving in the funding. And then then the next fund, or the last fund, is the stormwater, which receives the fee in lieu of trees. We use that for tree use only, but that's new trees, tree trimming, and removal of trees. If the cell tower lease is approved, the lease proceeds will go into this stormwater fund for natural resource protection. Let me see here. So I wanted to point out here, we brought it up earlier, that our reserves earn interest, which is 16%. You can see the pocket there is 16% of our revenue. 47% are grants. You can see, you know, liquid fuels, we get 10%, impact fee, 12%. But the interest here is kind of key, that we have reserves and we're earning interest. So a lot of times we get grants, but the grants are reimbursable grants. So we have to put out the money, and we put it out, we were done paying for it, we put it back into the grants. I know Jamie does that, and they look at all the invoices, whatever, and then they give us the money. But that could be like a year or 2 years in between. Sometimes it takes a really good, long time. So the reserves that we have in the capital funds are not only giving us a lot of interest income, but it's giving us the flexibility to use those reserves for grants that we get, so we can keep improving things without having to go out and borrow money, because that can get really expensive. It's very
For
important.
utilizing the interest for the matching dollars, oftentimes for the grants that we need to have a matching component.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I have over here, if we're looking at interest of $1.3 million a year between all of our funds, that's a lot of money that's coming into the township. So the reserves that we currently have right now are key to us keeping financially, fiscally responsible, to be able to get the grants and to use the grants. I know that our reserves allowed me, when we did the bond issuance, because it was under 5 million and it's not subject to arbitrage, I didn't want to use that money for the land purchase, because I know we're probably going to have to do another bond issuance in 2026 late. So if we do that, I want to use that bond issuance to pay back the reserves that I used to purchase the land. And that's just really fiscally responsible, because now we have the interest that's earning on the 5 million. It can sit in there. We don't have to pay it back if it's over the amount we're paying out. And also, the new tranche is larger, and you have to spend that. You have to spend so much within 6 months, within a year, within 3 months. So by using the land purchase and reimbursing ourselves for that, that gives us the flexibility and really allows us to move things around. And it's just a really good thing that we had the ability to do that. So I just sort of wanted to stress that that's a very important aspect of what we have here.
What is the sale of fixed assets?
So when we replace like trucks or whatever, and we take the old one and we sell it.
Okay,
So if we purchase it and we split it between the capital funds and the sewer capital fund, when we sell it, we do the same thing. And that's the money that comes in for those.
okay.
Then if we go to, and for the expenses, because we went through that, I want to show you here. So this is an excerpt from our 10-year vehicle and capital plan. So in the fall this year, we realized Fred keeps a list of assets. I keep a list of like our assets with our vehicles and our equipment or whatnot. And Mimi was doing this for the 10-year replacement. And what we did was I sat down with Fred and we kind of combined all of them. So now we have a comprehensive list of all of our vehicles, the cost, the year they were purchased. We have the tag number, we have the Easy Pass transponder number in there. And then Fred went down, and if you look on this, the RWN means replace with new. And he has the year in there that he thinks we're gonna need to replace it. So I took out the snippet because I filtered it just for 2026. But this is a 10-year plan that goes down. So this is telling us, okay, we're gonna have to replace this equipment and these vehicles. This is how much it's gonna cost us based on an inflation rate of 2.5%. You could see that he put in there. And then he spreads it between the capital fund and the sewer fund. And then he also takes the sales value of the assets that we're getting rid of and replacing, and that's in the green portion. Now, if you add up the green portion for the sale of fixed assets, you're gonna see it's 7,500 for the sewer and 32,000 for the capital. But our budget is more than that, and that's because there were some items that we're gonna sell, but they didn't sell in 2025. They're gonna be in 2026. A lot of times, like if you order a police car, you order it and you pay for it, but you can't get it working because you have to get it fit out or whatever. So you have to wait to sell the old one, that type of a thing. So there's a small timing difference in there. But that is all here on this plan. And this is a really good plan. It's perpetual, this worksheet. We know where it's saved, and that's the one that we all update. And it's a really good thing to have, because if you look at the next slide, so this worksheet on the second sheet basically takes all of that information and says, okay, for the budget years, and you can see in the blue there on the left, 25 through 29, the average capital funding there of the 273, 218, that's the amount that we need out of the capital reserve fund just to maintain what we currently have. So that's the average of every single year, what we have to have in that fund just to maintain the current vehicles we have and the equipment we have that we're running the township with.
And is this a combination of public works vehicles and police vehicles together?
Yes, and then capital reserve, yes. And the sewer fund to the right, the portion over there to the right, that's 62,000. So in total, to maintain the current equipment that we have and the current vehicles that we have, we need to put aside $335,000 in the
next-
capital in the sewer fund.
Over a 5-year period of time.
No, every year.
Okay.
That's the average every year.
Oh, 335,
So if you
99,
add all of
22.
them and divide by 5,
I
that's
gotcha.
about the amount of the surplus that you have to put in,
Okay.
so that we need that in there. So whether it's coming from the reserve interest or we're moving it from the operating funds in, that's what we need, just so we can maintain what we currently have to take care of the township.
Mm.
And
This doesn't
then-
include the new gators that Fred needs.
So that is in the vehicle plan put in. So we do have that now. So what we're kind of saying now is we put everything in there. We have replaced with new if we're replacing it. And there might be a couple of items in there that are going to be brand new that we're not replacing something with, and
Okay.
there's not many of them.
So this is just the maintenance of what we already have and making sure it's in good working order. This is
Yes.
not accounting for any new vehicles or any new equipment that we would need.
Little bit of
A little bit.
planned of like.
little
the
bit of it?
Planned, but
There is,
small.
of yes, but for the most part, it's replacing what we have or planned expansions. Much of that for Public Works, more to be considered when there's a new garage, because obviously part of the challenge here is we don't have any place
Mhm.
to put that. So
But does this include expense for insurance on the vehicles?
No,
That's in a different,
that's,
Account.
yes, that's in the operating funds.
okay.
Yes, this is just the purchase. These are the capital funds, just the purchase of capital assets. But that figure, I don't think we ever had before, and I
I
want you
don't
guys
think
all
I
to
ever saw
understand
it
it's
before. Yeah.
really important. When Mimi put this worksheet together, it was great. And then with meeting with Fred and trying to come up with a comprehensive thing, this is really good because now we go by this. So next year, we kind of know what we need now and what we're replacing. I mean, we can push things out farther and bring it back, but according to Mimi, like if it's not on the plan, don't ask for it.
Yeah, well, and it's good planning. So thank you all for doing that, because if you look at the replacement costs, some of them are over $100,000. So if we're planning for that, that makes a lot more sense than if Fred has to come to us at a meeting and say he needs $100,000 truck or something. So
And I think that's how it always was. It was always like a shock. Like, oh, you need a new car? Like, why do you need a new car? The old one not working? And it's like, oh, that's $100,000. But now that we know what it is and we can plan over the span of 10 years, I'm sure that there'll be some things that are not within there.
And we have the entire worksheet, but it's very long, so I only took a little snippet out and I didn't include it in your packet. But I can like at the next meeting or whatnot, but if you ever want to come in and like review it or go through it, I'll sit down with you and go through it. No, it's a very good worksheet. It took a lot of time to put together, but the information that we're going to get out of it now and we're keeping it up to date makes budgeting and realizing what we need a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Good
agree. And I
township.
think I mentioned
Right.
this when we met, the finance committee met, but I do think something like this would be, I know you're doing it with technology and we're doing it with the vehicles. And I think something like this moving forward as we start improving the parks and we have more,
That would be ideal.
um,
That would be ideal.
playground equipment and, you know, my visions for like
No, I
when we
think it
get,
would
when
be
we get those
excellent.
grants and, we can
Like the
improve the
Gaga ball
parks.
pit that I
Yeah.
know we're gonna get for Oxford Park for that boy that needs it
Just needs to
desperately.
build it. Yeah.
Just to understand what we actually need just to maintain what we currently have without anything new, no new projects.
Right.
I think is really important for us to know because it makes us fiscally responsible. So when we look
Absolutely.
at any surplus or whatnot, we know, hey, this
making
is
good
already spoken
decisions.
for.
It's already spoken for because we got to replace this. Yep,
Right.
That's
Yep.
good planning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then,
We are also going to do, the next plan that's in process is for our buildings, where we've been pulling
Oh,
that
good.
together for
Yeah.
the township building and the
Mhm.
Penland Woods Community Building. So we'll put that together and then parks will be the next one we'll jump.
Parks will be next.
Always
And-
fighting for my parks.
But we do have the flexibility if we have a mid-year emergency, we have reserves.
Yes.
that's why I say, let's keep our reserves because between the interest and the flexibility and emergencies, we need them. You don't want to have to go out and try to borrow. It puts you in a really bad
Absolutely.
situation.
And that we do have very good reserves still. And I think as I've looked in past budgets, trying, when I first started here, trying to get a sense of how things have been done and a little bit of the history, I know I could see where there was definitely discussion and there was a lot of paperwork for the different capital purchases and the capital projects to justify it. But I don't think there was this kind of planning done for what kind of reserves do you need and what does get spoken for each year. It was more, I think in the end, you have millions of dollars in reserves, so there's money there and you could go and get it. And I didn't feel comfortable with that. I know there's these things and I think it does make sense to do this for parks as well. It's 50 grand or something, right? 40 grand maybe to resurface a tennis court or meaning it's like significant. That's just maintenance. That's not
Mhm.
building a new
Right.
court. There's things like that come up and I definitely agree. It's a really good idea to do that. So we have you've seen the very detailed use of reserves plan that we have too, where we have our capital projects. And we've sort of, we're guessing a little bit of when they might happen. For future years, we're guessing about whether we'll get grants and how much. I go back and forth between being conservative and being optimistic. Depends on what I need that day. But it's, and then what we're going to use for our match, what would just be that portion of it. And that's well and good. But then there's sort of just this bread and butter stuff. Every year, there's some piece of it that's going into vehicles and maybe not literally every year for the building, but if you sort of know over time, it averages out to 50,000 a year. There's like a piece that just to keep there that we need to take care of what we already have.
We talked about the buildings and the parks. We're working on the buildings, then we'll do the parks. We have this for the roads already too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we
yes.
already have the roads planned out. That's a little more fluid because they deteriorate at a different rate depending on the conditions and stuff, but we already have the same exact plan for the roads. So
That's the one place where I've seen it anticipated. Like we know we're gonna do. these.
yeah, we kind of have an
Yeah.
idea of where we're going to be paving for
Mhm.
the next couple of years, next 10 at least.
Great.
Yeah.
I like it.
That was because Fred put that together with help from Gilmore. That was a great planning tool to really see we need to be supplementing what we get from the state for through the gas tax for liquid fuels each year. So that's going to be coming out of capital reserves as well, which was why we're recommending to take the snow, ice,
Salt.
salt, thank you, out of the liquid fuels, the ice treater thingy. Like,
9 o'clock, it's allowed.
getting tired, running out of gas. Because that was out of liquid fuels, and it varies a little bit. It's in some ways I like it in liquid fuels because of that, because we don't know what kind of winter we're going to have. But really, we need liquid fuels just for paving. It just didn't make sense to be depleting that more and then pulling it out of capital reserve and not knowing how much we're going to need. It's going to be easier to watch that a little bit, I think, having that in the general fund with the rest of the public works operating expenses.
Are we anticipating at all a decrease of liquid fuels in the next few years?
No, they fixed that, sort of. So there had been talk for a while about, there was concern that we use less gas, as there are more electric vehicles, that the gas tax, and I still call it the gas tax, but there's now a new fee that's being imposed on electric vehicles.
Yes, there is.
Thank you, electric vehicles. So it's weather that may go down a little bit. There had been concern for a while that there could be some significant decreases just because of different
Okay,
vehicles.
so that fee's making up for the loss in
It's supposed to,
gasoline.
so it's new.
Yeah,
So assuming they got it right.
it was kind of a shock getting that in the mail.
The other thing that that Mimi and I are working on is we're gonna have a fund report that tells you the fund, the cash balance, and also what's restricted, what's assigned, because we look at our reserves and we may not realize that like Act 209 is in the traffic and you can't spend that. Or we have it assigned for the trees and you can't spend that. Liquid fuels you can't spend. So it would be good to look at each fund and the reserves in each fund, but kind of realize what's spoken for. And then put into that, if you can overlay into that, hey, if we're gonna do this project and we want this grant, this amount of money we need. We have to, this is the amount of money we need. So if we have to match the grant. So we're trying to work through right now a funding report that we can give to you that kind of encompasses all of that. So you have a better idea also of what types of reserves we have that we could actually spend in an emergency
Mhm.
if something came up or to use in that capacity. So that's coming.
Okay, great.
And then for the balance of the expenses, if we go to the last slide, you guys. To the last slide. So this is the capital plan. You guys have the full 5-year capital plan that I gave you. This is a snippet where I just listed out for the 2026 budget. The total capital fund expenses are for the budget are $4,960,000. If you look at this budget and you add in the vehicles or whatever, it's a little higher because you've got to remember the sewer capital fund, which is part of sewer, not here, is picking up some of those expenses. So it won't tie dollar for dollar, but it does tie. I made sure I went through all of that and I could explain the differences. But this lists out the projects that we plan on doing in 2026. So I'm sort of just given this, and I know the dollar value, but staff is here if you guys have any questions about any of the projects that I have listed here. But unless you have other questions for me, I'm done with it.
I just have one more. These are grants we've already been awarded in this column.
This is
or
not
just grants
anticipated grants. These are grants.
awarded or applied for.
Can you flag the ones that, I think I know them. Okay.
Only ones that we are waiting for right now are the actually, I'm not even including right now the LSA grant for the Public Works facility that we have received.
Is it the, where it says
The
Oxford
Bethlehem
Park
Pike and
applied for
Tennis
LSA?
Avenue, we're waiting to hear about the Arley grant for that. Oxford Park, we have received that $250,000. So that's only showing what we've received. I guess it's actually only received, other than I was optimistic about the traffic signals. I'm not sure why. I actually thought I had included the LSA grants for the Public Works facility and for Oxford Park in here, and I didn't.
So the only thing is the traffic signals.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've been awarded the one for Welsh Road and for Trewellen Avenue and Penland Pike. We've
Okay.
applied for the one for Bethlehem Pike and Tennis
So
Avenue
it's just the one traffic signal.
that we're
Yeah.
waiting to hear
Yeah.
from. Yes.
So roughly over $5 million
Mm-hmm.
we've received
We've
that
been-
we're accounting for it as it relates to
For
these
current
projects.
projects.
For our
Yep.
current projects.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome.
Like, I want to thank
That's
the staff
terrific.
and all the hard work that you guys, because that is a tremendous feat.
Yeah, that is. Writing grants is not trivial, so that is very much appreciated. That's, again, free money, essentially.
It's our taxpayer dollars that we're getting back to use for improvements to Lower Gwinnett. So it's a huge.
Yeah.
deal.
And
Well, free money meaning it doesn't come out of our local tax base necessarily.
the, under the cost column, the 2026 budget column, the 4.2 million, is that additional cost for the project, or that's what we expect to spend, but it includes the grant money we've received?
That's what we think is, we might spend in 2026 if all of these projects move forward as we hope they will.
And would it be, that is in addition to the grants we've received?
The
or-
grants will will reimburse us in time
Okay.
for those costs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
There is no way we're going to spend $4.2 million next year. I'll
We
just say
could
that.
try.
We can, but we're going to try. That's what's there.
Momentum.
That would be.
So like, for example, my guy who I'm really advocating for him to get his Gaga pit, but we're to the $75,000.
When you're ready.
75,000 is what we plan to spend of the 250,000 that we're identifying that's needed.
It's actually more than that even. So if you look in your,
Yeah, look at the
budget.
actual, not the snippet.
I didn't want to go,
look
I
at the
saw,
capital plan.
I started to look at it and I see how you broke it all out. So we're going to spend like 80 some thousand. I saw it.
yeah.
Okay.
But this is what we think is going to be the share of those projects in
Gotcha.
2026. So we're getting, occasionally there, a project moves a little faster than we expect. There's plenty of money in the capital accounts that we're not going to stop them. They don't have to. You're approving those budgets too. But this is where we think we're going to go. It's just that
Okay.
then there's somewhere DEP decides we need to do something more, or PennDOT, there's just
Or we
stuff
don't have
happens. Or it's also an awful lot of projects, and at some point,
I got
You
you.
guys need
time.
sleep.
that.
Just two more points. So if we do another bond issuance in 2026, we're going to be doing it at the end of the year. So there is no debt payments for that additional bond issuance in the budget because those won't occur till 2027. And also the budget that I included in your packet is on Excel. I use this budget. It's very succinct. I am going to be inputting it into Munis, and at the November 18th meeting, you will have that printed out in Munis. I don't think I'm going to do the big binders, but I'm going to put it together and staple it for you so it's easier to go through. I just use this because it's really easy when I'm approving invoices and looking at invoices to find the account numbers. And it has all of the text in here also for what it's for. And this will all be input into Munis, so you'll get what you normally get from that in our accounting software.
I just want to say thank you to all of the staff for all that you have done, but especially to our finance department and Melinda and Mimi for what you did in putting together this budget. This is by far, I think, the most efficient and straightforward budget that I've received since I've been on the board. As it relates to the clarity of communication, the understanding of where everything fits in and the descriptors. And even though it is 9 p.m., I'm still very appreciative of all of the detail and the time that you put together. I think it makes it much easier for the public to understand, for the board to understand, and for us to see like the